Alright guys, Wes here, welcome back to the channel. So after a shaky launch for Dragon's Dogma 2, we have a ton of news to talk about. As you know, I was able to play through the game early for a review, and I can confirm when working as intended, this game is amazing. Now unfortunately that makes today's news sting extra hard, because aside from all of the technical issues that the game is suffering from, we also didn't know about the game's business model until launch day, and let's just say the overall gaming community is not happy about it at all. Now if you've played Capcom games in the past, then that business model is kind of par for the course, but there is a silver lining, guys. We have a lot of news to talk about. Everything from new comments from Capcom regarding the performance as well as microtransactions. There was also a mod that just recently released that will improve performance on some systems. So we're going to talk about that and so much more. Guys, check the video chapters for easy viewing. Also, I'm giving away a PS5 once we hit 160,000 subscribers. I've got those details in the pinned comment, and without further delay, let's get started. So in case you didn't hear, although you probably did, Dragon's Dogma 2 launched to a mostly negative review on Steam due to a number of major issues. The performance on PC is extremely poor, and Capcom also decided to include de novo DRM, which is known for causing additional technical problems and lower performance metrics on top of whatever other problems that the game already has, which in this case is quite a bit. The PC version of this game has super low frame rates, it is CPU locked, and overall the optimization is terrible. Most of it is tied to NPCs, so if you're in a large area with a lot of NPCs, you're most likely going to have a bad time even if you have a monster rig and you're playing on 1080p. Most PC gamers are struggling, like I said, to run above 30 FPS in those large areas, and then you have the microtransactions on top of all of that, making the entire situation worse. But like I said, if you're one of those people with a monster rig, I do have a solution for you guys in a bit, so stick around for that. You do not want to miss it. Now, as I briefly mentioned, this leads us to our next topic, and that is the microtransaction situation with Dragon's Dogma 2. So to kind of briefly just tell you my take on microtransactions, I think if a game is free to play, then microtransactions are fine. If there's multiplayer with cosmetics, I don't mind microtransactions in that case. But whenever it comes to single player games that are meant to be single player experiences that cost a full price of $70, I am fully against microtransactions. However, I do want to play devil's advocate a little bit for the microtransaction situation, but only a little bit. Basically, every Capcom game over the last few years has come out with some kind of time-saving microtransaction, and like Dragon's Dogma 2, you don't have to use those. Now, for Dragon's Dogma itself, DD1 had microtransactions as well, so I'm not really surprised that they are featured in Dragon's Dogma 2, but still, it's a single player game. They should not be in the game. Now, the reason that Dragon's Dogma 2 microtransactions are so controversial is because this is an open world RPG that's entirely based around adventure and random encounters to level up your character. The fact you're able to pay to speed the process up, or even pay to fast travel around the map and completely avoid random encounters, is a really bad look on Capcom's part. And that's not even getting into all of the other microtransactions that were revealed on launch day as well. So for me, it's not really surprising that the game dropped to a mostly negative on Steam. I think the majority of the mostly negative reviews on Steam are due to their performance. It could be more than likely 50-50, but like most of the microtransactions, you're able to do that stuff in game already just by playing the game. So the people that are able to look past the microtransactions aren't even able to play the game due to the abysmal performance. So it's not really a surprise to me that the game is mostly negative on Steam right now. Either way, you have to admit that this was not a good first impression, and the Steam user score is entirely understandable. And one thing that I do want to address is I was one of the lucky people that got to play Dragon's Dogma 2 early, and there was a lot of genuine concern on why I didn't bring up microtransactions in my comment section after the game went live. And what I'll say about that is I didn't know that there was going to be any, although I should have assumed, but in the build that I played, there's no signs of microtransactions on that build. Now, Capcom was most likely expecting this kind of backlash because just a few hours after the official launch, they released a statement promising bug fixes and stability updates. However, they didn't really apologize for the microtransactions, and if anything, they kind of just made the situation worse. But Capcom is well aware of most of the issues at hand, so hopefully they'll be able to patch things up quickly and win back the goodwill of gamers in a reasonable amount of time. Now let's go ahead and talk about the overall performance of Dragon's Dogma 2. As you know from my review video, or rather my first impressions, I was pretty let down on the PC version. I was hoping it was going to be a bit more optimized. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Now, after the launch, we learned that the FPS was tied to the NPCs, to which most of the community rallied behind the thought of quote-unquote terminating the useless NPCs. That way they could increase their FPS. But this right here is where we get the silver lining. One quick fix that can make the PC version a lot better, for those of you with a 40 series NVIDIA GPU, is the addition of DLSS frame generation. Now, if you've been playing on PC games for a while and you have a 40 series GPU, you know how much of a difference DLSS can make, and in a game like Dragon's Dogma 2, that kind of improved frame stability would go a long way in making the experience more playable for those who aren't willing to deal with low frame rates. Now, what's really funny about this whole situation situation with DLSS 3 with frame generation in Dragon's Dogma 2 is they actually have the required frame generation DLSS already on Dragon's Dogma, but the issue is there is no feature to enable frame generation on the game. Like, you go to the options and frame generation is just not there, even though the NVIDIA DLSS FG file is literally installed with Dragon's Dogma 2. All it would take for Capcom is to literally enable that. Now, I believe there was actually official talk for Capcom to add DLSS and that frame generation support for Dragon's Dogma 2, but they were saying that that was not going to happen until the first title update, which at this point is who knows how long. But if you have an NVIDIA GeForce 4000 series GPU, mod developer Pure Dark just released a free DLSS enabler for Dragon's Dogma 2 already, so you should download that and start using it as soon as possible. Right now, if you go to large points of interest, you get about 30 frames per second without the frame generation, but the second you enable it, and I mean the second, the frames go up another 30 to 40 frames per second. So you go from like sub 20 to 60 plus, sometimes 70 in larger areas. It's a game changer. Strongly recommend it. I will leave a link in the description. Once again, it is free, so shout out to the modded community for making that happen. What I find wild though is they literally have the DLSS frame generation files on the game Dragon's Dogma 2, like it's in the files. Why were they not enabled for launch? I have no idea. If Pure Dark can do it the day of release, like 30 minutes after release, why is it going to take Capcom until the next title update for a small patch like this one? Now, it's possible that the DLSS 3 files that Capcom put in Dragon's Dogma 2 were just for testing and the feature was never actually going to be included, but it's also possible that this is a work in progress and support for the official DLSS frame gen will be added at a later date. But regardless of what the official plan for fixing the frame rate is, you should definitely be running Dragon's Dogma 2 on PC with the Pure Dark DLSS enabler, because again, it makes a massive difference. Now, while the PC version of the game seems to at least have a silver lining when it comes to the frame rate, the same can't really be said of the console version, which has some of the most disappointing performance of any recent Capcom release. Ever since Capcom started developing on their in-house RE engine, they became one of the most consistent AAA developers in the industry when it came to good performance and solid frame rates. But Dragon's Dogma 2 was also built on the RE engine, but it's also a way bigger game than anything else ever built on it, and as such, the performance has seriously suffered. The console version runs with an unlocked frame rate, but it tends to hover around 30 FPS and frequently drop below 20. And since that's the console version, it's not like you could just download a mod to make that better. So I'm really hoping that Capcom has a plan to improve the performance on the console version as well as the PC version, because if Dragon's Dogma 2 players have to wait until the PS5 Pro or even the PS6 so that they could play this game at a consistent frame rate, that is not going to be a good look for Capcom given the standards that they've set for their RE engine. Moving right along, let this be a public service announcement because there is a huge bug that needs to be fixed as soon as possible. If you're muscling through the issues with Dragon's Dogma 2 right now, you probably should be avoiding using the load from the last in option, because there's currently a glitch that can result in you permanently losing your save progress by doing so. I have no idea how something like this made it into the launch version of the game, and I really feel sorry for those unfortunate players who had to find out the hard way, but thankfully we know about it now, and Capcom is surely working on a fix for it. So honestly, I would err on the safe side and just use the load from the last save and not the last in option. So moving right along, I do want to point a few things out in defense of DD2. There is currently a misconception going around that Dragon's Dogma 2 locks all of its cosmetic changes to the microtransaction system, but I want to point out that that just is not the case at all. Most of the stuff that you're able to spend money on in Dragon's Dogma 2, you could just do it in the game for free. For instance, there was a lot of concern going around that if you wanted to edit your character's appearance or your pawn's appearance, you have to spend money on microtransactions to do so. That's not the case. The way to do so is pretty easy. Once you enter the first main city, go to the marketplace and you'll find an open building with a huge rift stone inside. There's an NPC in that building selling a book for 500 rift points, and that will allow you to edit your arisen or your pawn. So while we shouldn't tone down the overall heat that Capcom has been getting for the amount of microtransactions there are in this game, I at least want to make sure that you guys don't think that there isn't a way to go back to the character creator without paying real money for it. Like I said, that's the case for the fast travel system and almost every other microtransaction that there is. Well guys, that's going to wrap it up with this video. What do you think about the state of Dragon's Dogma 2? Do you think all of this is justified criticism, or do you think the gaming community is just blowing things out of proportion? While I do think it's easy to jump on bandwagons and be a bit dramatic with our criticism, it's undeniable that Dragon's Dogma 2 has some major problems that weren't made clear to the public until after the early reviews came out. What really sucks for me is that this game is actually a really fun experience, and now that all of this drama has happened, some people just will not pick up Dragon's Dogma 2 probably ever. Either way though guys, thanks for watching this video. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed, subscribe with your notifications turned on. Don't forget to enter the PS5 giveaway, Those details are in the pinned comment. And until next time, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.